The assassination happened during what was supposed to be a momentous occasion. President Kim stood tall at the podium in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, his voice steady as he addressed the assembled representatives of over 300 species. Earth had only joined the interstellar community 30 years ago, relatively new compared to civilizations that measured their histories in millennia. Earth seeks only fair treatment in trade agreements, President Kim was saying. Our resources may be valuable, but they are finite. We propose. His words stopped abruptly. A small silver dart, no larger than a honeybee, had struck his neck. The president's hand went to the spot, his expression shifting from confusion to pain. Within seconds, his knees buckled. By the time his security detail reached him, President Kim's eyes had already gone blank. Ambassador Lee, seated in the Earth delegation section 10 meters away, leaped to her feet. Her path to the president was blocked by the sudden chaos. Aliens of various sizes and forms rising, moving, some fleeing the chamber while others pressed forward for a better view. The president's security team formed a protective circle around his fallen form, but Lee could see from their expressions that it was already too late. Medical team. We need a medical team now, she shouted, but her voice was lost in the growing din of the chamber. Council security forces, tall beings with 4 arms and reflective skin, moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, their weapons not drawn but visibly present on their hips. One approached Lee. Ambassador, we must move you to a secure location immediately. Lee resisted. I need to get to the president. The president is being attended to. Your safety is now the priority. From her position, Lee could see the Earth security team checking vital signs, one of them uselessly applying emergency medical procedures on President Kim's still form. The poison had worked too quickly, designed specifically for human biology. Screens throughout the chamber and across Earth showed the same horrible moment from multiple angles. The dart's flight was barely visible, a silver streak that seemed to appear from nowhere. Analysis later showed it had been fired from a hidden mechanical device installed in the chamber's decorative wall panels, right behind the speaking platform. Within an hour, Earth's orbital stations were on highest alert. Ships were being recalled to the solar system. The vice president was sworn in while in a secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, and all across Earth, humans were watching the footage again and again, their collective shock turning slowly to anger. In the council's executive tower, Ambassador Lee faced a hastily convened emergency session of the council's inner circle. 7 alien representatives sat in a semicircle, their species among the oldest and most powerful in the galaxy. Councilor Tay, representing the Volith Confederation, spoke while his 6 eyes blinked rapidly. The council categorically denies any involvement in this tragic event. Our preliminary investigation suggests this was clearly the work of terrorists, perhaps extremists from the Outer Rim who oppose Earth's growing influence. Lee's diplomatic training nearly failed her as rage threatened to overcome her composure. Extremists who somehow bypassed all council security, who had access to install a weapon in the most secure chamber in the galaxy, who knew exactly where President Kim would be standing. We understand your distress, Ambassador, said another counselor, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Bomb. But making accusations without evidence is counterproductive. Evidence. Lee's voice rose despite her efforts. The weapon was council technology. The security footage shows no unauthorized entry to the chamber in the week before the attack. This was an inside job. An unfortunate choice of words, Councilor Tay replied smoothly. Rest assured, we will investigate thoroughly. In the meantime, perhaps Earth should focus on a peaceful transition of power rather than dangerous speculation. The threat was thinly veiled. Lee understood the message. Accept the terrorist explanation, or face consequences. When the meeting ended, Lee was escorted back to the Earth Embassy by Council security. She felt like a prisoner more than a diplomat. Once inside the secure communication room, she contacted Earth. They're lying, she told the emergency cabinet meeting displayed on her screen. The Council, or at least some members, are behind this. The newly sworn-in president nodded grimly. We suspected as much. Ambassador, prepare for immediate evacuation. We're sending a ship for you and all Earth personnel. Sir, if we pull out completely, we lose our voice here. Safety first, Ambassador. We have intelligence suggesting you may be the next target. Lee wanted to argue but saw the logic. Understood, Mr. President. Back on Earth, in a hardened facility deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Park watched the same footage everyone else had seen. But his team was analyzing it frame by frame, using technologies not shared with the galactic community. There, said his chief analyst, pointing to a nearly invisible distortion in the air near the wall panel. Optical camouflage. Someone was physically present to ensure the device worked properly. Park nodded. Can you identify the species? A height and movement pattern suggest Volith. The same species as Counselor Ta. Park wasn't surprised. The Volith had been the most vocal opponents of Earth's latest resource protection measures. His secure communication terminal signaled an incoming message from the president. Park answered immediately. Mr. President. Admiral, do we have confirmation? Yes, sir. It was definitely a council operation, likely led by the Volith. The president's face showed no emotion, but his voice was steel. Then we're moving to Contingency Omega. Park had hoped this day would never come, but had prepared for it nonetheless. Understood, sir. We'll begin immediate activation. When the call ended, Park turned to face his staff, 12 men and women who had dedicated their lives to a project most of humanity didn't know existed. They'd done exactly what we prepared for, he told them, his voice steady despite the weight of what was to come. It's time. His chief of operations, Commander Sue, immediately began entering codes into her terminal. Around the room, other staff members did the same, each accessing different parts of the system as a security measure. Authorization confirmed, Sue announced, awaiting final command sequence. Park placed his palm on the scanner built into his command station. Computer, this is Admiral Park. Authorization Omega-7 Delta 9. Activate Protocol Thunderbolt. The computer's voice was calm. Protocol Thunderbolt activated. Awakening sequence initiated for all units. On screens around the room, status indicators began changing from dormant red to active green. Deep in secret bases throughout the solar system, power systems that had been idle for decades began to hum with life. Park watched as the first confirmation signals came in from bases on the Moon, Mars, Europa, and the asteroid belt. 30 years of preparation were about to bear fruit. Send word to all sleeper personnel, he ordered. Code phrase. The stars have eyes. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, thousands of men and women, pilots, engineers, tactical officers, and commanders, who had lived ordinary civilian lives would now receive the message they had trained for but hoped never to get. And now, Park said, looking at each member of his staff, we show the galaxy why Earth should never have been crossed. President Han tried to absorb the impossible sight before him. The underground hangar stretched for kilometers in every direction, its ceiling at least 200 meters high. Suspended in massive cradles were warships that made Earth's publicly known defense vessels look like toys. How many? He finally managed to ask. Director Song consulted her tablet. 120 capital ships in this facility alone. 3 more facilities of similar size exist throughout the solar system, plus support craft, fighters, and specialized units. Han had been vice president for 4 years, yet he had never known this existed. President Kim had been scheduled to brief him next month as part of the standard security protocols. Now Kim was dead, and Han was seeing humanity's greatest secret while still reeling from being sworn in just 8 hours ago. This facility has existed for 150 years, said Director Song as she led the new interim president deeper into the cavernous space, since before we officially joined the galactic community. Workers moved purposefully across platforms and gangways, Lights were coming on throughout the facility, illuminating more and more of the massive space and the gleaming ships within it. But first contact was only 30 years ago, Han said, struggling to reconcile what he knew of history with what he was seeing. Song nodded. Officially, yes. But we detected alien signals 90 years before that. A special division of Earth's combined intelligence agencies intercepted and decoded them. They learned enough to understand that the galaxy was not always a peaceful place. Han stopped walking and turned to face her directly. Are you telling me Earth knew about aliens for 120 years and kept it secret? Only a very small group knew, fewer than 50 people at any given time. They formed the original Sentinel program. Song gestured toward the nearest ship, a sleek vessel that looked nothing like conventional Earth designs. They realized Earth was woefully unprepared for contact with potentially hostile civilizations, so they began preparing. President Han stared at the massive warships suspended in their cradles. Each one displayed the Earth Defense Force insignia, but with additional markings he didn't recognize. Some looked almost predatory in their design, far more aggressive than the diplomatic and scientific vessels Earth publicly deployed. How did we keep this secret? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Compartmentalization, misdirection, and necessity, replied Song. Every president is briefed only after taking office. The ancient fleet was our insurance policy. She led him toward a central command platform that overlooked the entire hangar. On the way, they passed engineers and crew members preparing ships for deployment. Everyone moved with practiced efficiency, as if they had rehearsed this exact scenario countless times. These people, they've been training for this? Han asked. Some are full-time Sentinel personnel. Others are sleeper agents who live normal lives until activated. The pilot of your presidential shuttle is actually one of our best capital ship commanders. The math teacher who won the National Education Award last year is our leading tactical officer. Han thought of his own security detail, the men and women who had hustled him to safety when news of the assassination broke. My personal guards. Dual trained. They protect you. But they're also part of the program. We needed people close to you in case of emergency. On the command platform, screens displayed status reports from throughout the solar system. Han could see similar facilities on the Moon, Mars, and what appeared to be inside several asteroids. All showed the same activity, massive ships being prepared for deployment. The technology, Han said, gesturing toward the nearest vessel. It looks advanced even by galactic standards. In many ways, it is, Song confirmed. We've had a century and a half to work on these designs. While officially we acted impressed by alien technology when first contact happened, in reality, we were studying ways to counter or improve upon everything we detected from their signals. And after joining the galactic community, we had legitimate access to even more advanced concepts, which we quietly incorporated, all without anyone suspecting. We limited our official technological development to maintain the appearance of a young spacefaring species. Meanwhile, everything truly cutting-edge went into the Sentinel program. General Choi, the newly appointed head of Earth's Joint Military Command, approached with a tablet. Though Han had known him for years as a conventional military leader, the man now moved with a different authority, as if a mask had been removed. The activation codes are ready, sir, Choi said, offering the tablet. We await your command. Han didn't take it immediately. Tell me honestly, how effective would these ships be against the Galactic Council forces? Choi and Song exchanged glances before Song answered. The Council races believe our technology is approximately 50 years behind theirs. In reality, in some areas, we're at least 20 years ahead. Our weapons systems utilize principles they haven't fully explored. Our defensive capabilities incorporate countermeasures to their standard attack protocols. We've been observing their combat drills and fleet exercises for decades, Choi added. They haven't seen ours. Han took the tablet but didn't enter the code yet, and the Council has no idea this exists. We've detected scan attempts from passing alien vessels over the years, Song said. Our concealment technologies have prevented any discovery. As far as they know, Earth has a modest defense force consistent with our apparent technological level. What about other humans, civilians, politicians? Someone must have noticed something. The facilities are built beneath natural formations that shield them from detection. The funding comes through thousands of separate classified projects across multiple nations. The materials are procured through front companies. Even most of our own satellites can't detect these bases. Han shook his head in amazement. This is the most elaborate secret in human history. It had to be, Song said simply. If the Council knew we had this capability, they would have eliminated us long ago. They'd done it before to emerging species they considered threats. This last statement hung in the air. Han looked at her sharply. You have proof of this. We do. The earliest signals we intercepted included discussions of a species called the Novan, who developed too quickly for the Council's comfort. They were subjected to what was officially recorded as a regrettable natural disaster. In reality, it was a coordinated strike that set their civilization back 300 years. Han felt the weight of his new office pressing down on him like never before. In the span of a single day, he had lost his president, assumed leadership, and discovered that humanity had been preparing for interstellar war for generations. He looked out at the fleet, humanity's secret guardians, and made his decision. How long until they're ready to deploy? The first wave can launch within 6 hours, Choi replied. Full deployment within 24. Han entered his authorization code into the tablet. The screen flashed green, then displayed a simple message. Ancient fleet activated. Let's hope the Council realizes their mistake, Han said quietly, before they see what humanity is truly capable of. Commander Jin was inspecting drilling equipment when his communicator buzzed in his pocket. The small device vibrated with a distinct pattern. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. An old-fashioned SOS followed by a specific rhythm he had memorized years ago, but never expected to actually feel. His heart immediately began racing, but his face remained calm. Looking around the mining operation that had been his cover for the past 7 years, he caught the eyes of his second-in-command, Officer Ba. She had felt the same alert on her communicator, and the look they exchanged confirmed it wasn't a drill. Everyone, take a break, Jin announced to the 20-person crew working in the main cavity of asteroid VK421. Mandatory safety check in 10 minutes. The crew, all of whom had been selected for both their mining skills and their secret military training, nodded and began securing their equipment. They had practiced this hundreds of times in simulation. No one panicked. No one asked questions. They simply followed procedure. Jin retreated to his small office carved into the rock and entered a 16-digit code into his terminal. The screen changed from the standard mining company interface to a military command system. A message appeared. THUND protocol activated. IMMEDATLY. He placed his palm on the screen, where a hidden scanner read not just his fingerprints, but his bone structure and blood vessel pattern. Commander Jin acknowledging Thunderbolt Protocol. Authentication. Sleeping giant awakens. The terminal beeped once, then displayed new instructions. Jin read them quickly, then tapped an intercom button. All personnel, this is Commander Jin. We are now on active military status. Report to your stations immediately. This is not a drill. Within minutes, the mining crew had shed their civilian personas. Jumpsuits were replaced with military uniforms that had been stored in secret compartments throughout the asteroid. Mining tools were secured, and weapon lockers were opened for the first time outside of training exercises. The transformation was remarkable. People who had posed as geologists, engineers, and miners now stood tall as military officers. Their posture and expressions completely changed. Jin led his team to the center of the asteroid, where a massive steel door had been disguised as part of the rock face. He placed his hand on a seemingly ordinary patch of stone, and the entire wall slid aside to reveal a command center. Begin power-up sequence, Jin ordered as they entered. Initiate systems check and prepare for departure. The command center suddenly hummed with activity as dormant systems came to life. Screens lit up around the circular room, showing various parts of what was hidden inside the asteroid. Not just a base, but an entire warship. Reactor core online, reported Officer Bai, now at the engineering station. Power at 20% and rising. Weapons systems initializing, said another crew member. All banks reporting green status. Jin took his place in the command chair at the center of the room. Begin separation preparation. Alert me when we reach 80% power. For 7 years, Jin and his crew had maintained their cover as a normal mining operation. The asteroid they had hollowed out contained valuable minerals, which they actually extracted and sold to maintain their facade. But the real purpose of their operation was to conceal and maintain the warship hidden within. The ship, designated Shadow Talon, was a dreadnought-class vessel, over 1 kilometer long and armed with weapons systems, decades ahead of what Earth publicly acknowledged possessing. It had been built in sections on Earth, transported to the asteroid belt disguised as mining equipment, and assembled in secret. As systems continued to come online, Jin opened a secure channel to Earth Command. This is Commander Jin of Shadow Talon. We are at 60% readiness and preparing for asteroid separation. Estimated time to full combat readiness, 40 minutes. Acknowledged, Shadow Talon, came the reply. Stand by for fleet coordination details. Similar scenes were playing out across the solar system. In the rings of Saturn, beneath the surface of Europa, in hidden bases on Mars, and in deep ocean facilities on Earth itself, the ancient fleet was awakening. At Lunar Base Alpha, a retirement community for former military personnel had transformed into a buzzing command center within minutes of receiving the activation code. The community's central recreational dome, which had appeared to be nothing more than a gathering place for elderly retirees, had retracted its false floor to reveal a state-of-the-art fleet command center. Fleet Admiral Kang, an elderly woman who had been posing as a university professor specializing in ancient history for the past decade, strode purposefully across the command floor. Despite being in her 70s, she moved with the vitality and authority of someone half her age. Status report, she demanded as she reached the central platform. All fleet elements reporting in, Admiral, replied her chief of staff. 86% of vessels are in active startup. The remainder are acknowledging and initiating procedures. Kang nodded and activated her communication link to Earth Command. Fleet Admiral Kang reporting as ordered. The ancient fleet stands ready. Back on Earth, President Han sat in the newly activated war room beneath the presidential residence. Around him, the Earth Security Council, the highest military and intelligence officials from the major nations, watched in stunned silence as they were briefed on the full extent of the Sentinel program and the ancient fleet. Many of them had known pieces of the program, but none except the previous directors had known its full scope. The revelation that Earth possessed a hidden fleet of warships technologically superior to anything in their public arsenal was shocking even to these hardened officials. "This can't be real," said the security minister from the European Federation. "We would have known." "I assure you, it is very real," replied Director Song. "Your predecessors helped build it." Each nation contributed resources, personnel, and technology, all carefully hidden among other defense projects. The intelligence director from the Pan-Asian Alliance studied the fleet specifications on her screen. "These capabilities exceed anything we've publicly developed by at least 50 years. That was the point, Song explained. To maintain a technological advantage that the Galactic Council wouldn't suspect. President Han had been quietly absorbing all of this information. Now he raised his hand for silence. "What matters now is not how this was kept secret, but what we do with it," he said firmly. "The assassination of President Kim was an act of war against Earth. We need to decide our response. The room fell silent as an intelligence officer entered and handed a datapad to Director Song. She reviewed it quickly, her expression hardening before passing it to the president. Han read the information, then looked up at the assembled council members. Our deep cover agents in the council have provided confirmation. The assassination was ordered by the Inner Circle, specifically by representatives of the Volith and Meridian species. It was not the act of terrorists, but a deliberate decision by council leadership. Murmurs of anger spread through the room. Their intent appears to be to destabilize Earth's government before announcing new resource extraction policies that would effectively give them unrestricted access to our system's resources. Han continued. They expected us to be in disarray for months. The defense minister slammed his fist on the table. They must be held accountable. And they will be, Han agreed. But proportionally and precisely. We will not become the aggressors here. He stood and faced the Security Council. I am authorizing the deployment of the ancient fleet, but with strict parameters. Our targets will be military only. We will demonstrate our strength and demand justice for President Kim's assassination, but we will not initiate a full-scale war if it can be avoided. Looking around the room at each council member, he asked, "Are we in agreement?" One by one, they nodded their assent. President Han took a deep breath and turned to Director Song. Deploy the fleet. The Galactic Council's primary defense station orbited the vast gas giant, Toralava, far from any inhabited worlds. This positioning was strategic, remote enough to prevent civilian casualties if ever attacked, yet central enough to rapidly deploy forces throughout Council space. For 3 centuries, it had stood as an unassailable symbol of the Council's military might. No hostile force had ever attempted to approach it. Until today. Senior defense operator Sol of the Volith species was completing his routine scan when proximity alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. His 6 eyes blinked rapidly in confusion as he checked his instruments. Impossible, he muttered, adjusting the settings. Nothing had appeared on the long-range sensors, yet now his screen showed hundreds of unknown vessels, materializing just outside the defense perimeter. Unidentified fleet detected, Sul announced, his voice rising. Multiple vessels, unknown configuration. The command center erupted into activity. Station Commander Eknar rushed to the main display. How did they approach undetected? Eknar demanded. They didn't approach, Commander, Sul replied, his voice shaking. They simply appeared. One moment nothing, the next moment. Fold space technology, interrupted the station's science officer. But the energy signatures don't match any known species. The vessels on the screen were unlike anything in the Council database. Sleek, darkly gleaming ships with predatory lines. No external engine nacelles, no visible weapon ports, yet their posture was unmistakably military. They had arranged themselves in a precise formation that effectively surrounded the station and its defending fleet of 50 Council battlecruisers. Open a channel, ordered Commander Iknar. All frequencies. Before they could broadcast, their communication system activated on its own. This is Captain Du of the Earth vessel Vengeance, came a calm human voice, speaking perfect galactic standard. Stand down your weapons or be neutralized. A stunned silence fell over the command center. Earth. Commander Eknar finally managed. That's impossible. Earth doesn't possess this technology. Their ships are primitive by our standards. Apparently not all of them, the science officer said quietly. Commander Eknar regained his composure. Prepare defensive screens. Alert the battlecruiser fleet to assume combat formation Delta and respond to that transmission. The communications officer nodded. Channel open, Commander. This is Defense Station Torala, Eknar said firmly. You have entered restricted Council space with unauthorized vessels. Power down your ships and prepare to be boarded, or we will be forced to take defensive action. The response was immediate. That would be unwise, Commander. We have no desire for unnecessary casualties. This is your final warning. Stand down. Eknar's facial ridges flushed with anger. Humans don't give orders to the Council. Defensive screens to maximum. All batteries prepare to fire. On the main view screen, the Council's prized battle cruisers moved into attack formation. Each was a marvel of galactic engineering. 2 kilometers long, armed with particle cannons that could shatter moons, and protected by energy shields thought to be impenetrable. Enemy vessels holding position, reported Sewell. They're making no attempt to evade. Eknar's mouth twisted into what his species considered a smile. Of course not. They're bluffing. They know they can't match our firepower. He raised his hand. All ships, commence fire. He never finished the order. The screen suddenly filled with blinding flashes as the Earth vessels released what appeared to be small, swift projectiles. They crossed the space between the fleets in milliseconds, passing through the Council battle cruisers' shields as if they weren't there. "Shields ineffective," shouted Sol in disbelief. Unknown penetrating technology. Rather than explosive impacts, however, the projectiles attached themselves to precise points on the Council vessels. A moment later, all 50 battle cruisers went dark, their lights and engines shutting down simultaneously. "What's happening?" demanded Eknar. "Some kind of localized electromagnetic pulse technology," the science officer reported, scanning frantically. "But far more sophisticated than anything we've encountered. It's completely disabled their systems without causing structural damage." On the screens, the mighty Council battle cruisers now drifted helplessly in space, their crews undoubtedly alive but unable to operate their vessels. The human's voice returned over the communication system. "As you can see, Commander, we could have destroyed your fleet. We chose not to. Now, about standing down." Elsewhere in the station, Ambassador Ryu of Earth had been in emergency negotiations with the Council's diplomatic corps when the attack began. The meeting room had a large viewport that provided a clear view of the space battle, or rather, the space surrender, taking place. The alien diplomats had been dismissive of Earth's demands for justice regarding President Kim's assassination. Now they crowded the viewport, mandibles clicking and tentacles waving in agitation as they watched their vaunted military forces neutralized within seconds. "What are these ships?" demanded Counselor Ta, his 6 Volith eyes blinking rapidly. "Earth doesn't possess such technology." Ryu stepped beside him at the viewport. She had been as surprised as anyone when the ancient fleet appeared, having not been privy to its existence before today. But she quickly grasped what it represented: humanity's hidden insurance policy. "You should have studied our history more carefully," she told the stunned alien diplomats beside her. "Humans always prepare for the worst." "This is impossible," insisted another counselor, a gas-filled being contained in a translucent environment suit. "Your species has only been spacefaring for 3 decades. "Officially," Ryu replied calmly. On the communications panel, a priority message chimed. Ryu activated it to reveal President Han's face. "Ambassador Ryu," the president said, "I trust you've observed our demonstration." "Yes, Mr. President. The Council representatives are reassessing their position." Han nodded. "Excellent. Please inform them that a delegation of our ships will be docking shortly. We expect the inner circle to meet us in the Grand Chamber. It's time for some honest discussion about the future of Earth Council relations." As the message ended, Ryu turned to face the alien diplomats. "Well, gentlemen, shall we prepare for negotiations?" Back on the Vengeance, Captain Du watched as the defense station powered down its weapons. A slight smile crossed her face. For 15 years, she had lived a double life. Outwardly a commercial shipping pilot, secretly training for this exact scenario. "Status report," she ordered. "All Council battle cruisers successfully neutralized," reported her tactical officer. "No casualties on either side. Defense station has stood down weapons. They're requesting communication with our leadership." Du nodded. "Inform Earth Command. Prepare boarding teams for the diplomatic mission. And maintain targeting locks on all Council facilities, just in case they have second thoughts." She rose from her command chair and walked to the viewport. The ancient fleet hung in space around her, dark and powerful. ships that had been hidden for generations, crewed by people who had trained in secret their entire careers. Her second-in-command joined her. "Captain, permission to speak freely." "Granted. Do you think this show of force will be enough? The Council has controlled this galaxy for millennia. They might not surrender their power so easily. Do consider the question. I don't expect surrender, Commander. Just respect. For too long, they've seen us as primitives to be manipulated. Today that changes." On her display, she could see additional Earth vessels emerging from fold space at strategic points throughout Council territory, near major military bases, shipyards, and government centers. Not attacking, merely watching. A clear message that nowhere in Council space was beyond Earth's reach. "Prepare my shuttle," Du ordered. "I'll be joining the President's delegation." As she headed for the shuttle bay, Du reflected on how quickly the galaxy's power structure had shifted. Just hours ago, the Council believed they held all the cards. Now they would learn that humanity had been holding a royal flush all along. The new Galactic Council chambers gleamed under the artificial lights, built into the lunar surface with massive transparent domes that offered views of both the star-filled sky and Earth hanging like a blue jewel above. It represented humanity's new place in the galactic order. 6 months had passed since the ancient fleet had revealed itself, shocking the older species who had underestimated their young neighbors. Today marked the formal signing of the new Galactic Charter, an event broadcast to every world in Council space. Thousands of delegates filled the chamber, their diverse forms representing over 300 species from across the galaxy. Where once the Volith, Meridians, and 5 other elder races had dominated proceedings from elevated platforms, now all delegation areas were positioned equally in a true circle. President Han stood at the central podium, his formal black suit adorned only with a small pin showing Earth and its moon intertwined, the new symbol of human leadership. Though he had aged visibly in the past 6 months, his voice remained strong as he addressed the assembly. "We gather today not to celebrate victory, but to embrace a new beginning," he said, his words automatically translated into hundreds of languages through the advanced systems built into the chamber. The old council believed that power came from domination. The new council recognizes that true strength comes from cooperation. In the front row, Ambassador Ryu watched with quiet satisfaction. The journey to this moment had been difficult, with moments when all-out war seemed inevitable. After the initial show of force, some council factions had attempted to rally military resistance. Those efforts collapsed when Earth revealed the full extent of their technological advantages, not just the ancient fleet, but surveillance systems that had monitored council communications for decades, weapon technologies that could disable rather than destroy, and defense systems that rendered conventional attacks useless. When Earth joined the galactic community 30 years ago, President Han continued, "We came in peace and friendship. We still do. But peace must be built on mutual respect, not exploitation." Han's gaze swept across the chamber, lingering briefly on the delegation from the Volith Confederation. Their representatives sat stiffly, their 6 eyes downcast. The once dominant species had suffered the greatest fall in status after evidence revealed their leadership's central role in President Kim's assassination. "The executed conspirators thought Earth weak because we sought peace," said President Han, his voice hardening slightly. "That was their mistake. Humans have always understood that peace must be protected. Throughout our history, we have prepared for the worst while hoping for the best." In the gallery overlooking the main chamber, Fleet Admiral Kang stood in her dress uniform, watching the proceedings with thoughtful eyes. At 75, she was the last remaining architect of the original Sentinel program. For 50 years, she had dedicated her life to building Earth's secret defenses, knowing she might never live to see them used. Beside her stood Commander Jin, now promoted to Rear Admiral after his leadership during what humans called the Reclamation, and aliens termed the Great Revelation. "Quite a change from 6 months ago," Jin observed quietly. Kang nodded. When I joined the program as a young lieutenant, I never imagined standing here. We expected to remain in the shadows indefinitely. Do you think they've truly accepted the new order? Jin asked, gesturing toward the alien delegations, or are they simply biding their time? Some accept, some resent, some calculate, Kang replied. But all respect. That's enough for now. On the chamber floor, President Han had moved to the ceremonial signing table. Representatives from each member species would add their mark to the new charter, which restructured the Galactic Council from an oligarchy dominated by the eldest species to a true representative body. The final provision requires disclosure of all hidden military assets, Han explained as the signing began. Earth has already submitted our complete inventory. We expect all member worlds to do the same. This requirement had been the most contentious. Several species had initially refused, claiming sovereign rights to military secrecy. Earth's response had been simple but effective. Detailed reports of those species' secret installations, proving that Earth already knew what they were hiding. As the signing continued, Director Song joined Kang and Jin in the gallery. The President has approved the transition plan, Song informed them quietly. The ancient fleet will gradually be integrated into Earth's public defense forces over the next 5 years. The secrecy era is officially ending. And the Sentinel program? Asked Jin. Repurposed, Song replied. We'll maintain surveillance capabilities, but shift focus to early warning of natural threats, rogue asteroids, supernova radiation, that sort of thing. The President believes we've watched the shadows long enough. Time to watch the stars instead. Below them, the signing ceremony concluded with thunderous applause. Species that had been enemies for centuries now stood together under a new compact, with Earth, the youngest member, as the architect of peace. Later that day, a smaller ceremony took place at the newly completed memorial garden outside the council complex. At its center stood a statue of President Kim, his hand extended in friendship. The inscription, written in Earth Standard and Galactic Common, read simply, "His death brought truth. His legacy brings peace." Fleet Admiral Kang stood beside the monument, watching as species that had once plotted against humanity now placed traditional symbols of respect at its base. Some brought crystalline flowers, others luminous stones or ceremonial weapons laid down as symbols of peace. The Galactic Council's new High Chancellor, a Tellurian known for her moderate views, approached Kang after placing her offering. "Admiral, my species has a saying, truth hidden is not truth destroyed. Your people kept remarkable secrets." Kang nodded politely. "Necessity, Chancellor. Nothing more." "Indeed. Though I wonder, what other surprises might Earth reveal in the centuries to come?" Kang smiled enigmatically, but offered no answer as the Chancellor moved on to greet other dignitaries. Commander Jin, now standing at her side, waited until they were alone before speaking. She's not wrong to wonder. The Sentinel program had other projects besides the fleet, didn't it? Kang's expression revealed nothing. Today is about the future, not the past, Admiral Jin. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Earth slowly rise over the lunar horizon, a breathtaking blue-white crescent against the blackness of space. From this distance, it looked peaceful, giving no hint of the technological marvels hidden beneath its oceans and mountains. "Was it worth it?" asked Jin finally. "All those years of secrecy, preparation, living double lives. We lost so many good people who never lived to see this day." Kang considered the question carefully, her eyes never leaving the Earth. "Look at what we've achieved," she said eventually. 6 months ago, humanity was considered a minor player, useful only for our resources. Council species were planning to strip mine our system. Now, we've restructured a 1,000-year-old galactic government. Dozens of subjugated species have gained true representation, and Earth is secure not just for our generation, but for centuries to come. She turned to face Jin directly. "Peace through strength is always worth it," she replied, turning back to watch the Earth rise over the lunar horizon. "And now, they know we have both. As celebration events continued throughout the lunar base, Kang quietly slipped away from the crowds. In her private quarters, she activated a secure terminal with her personal codes that would soon be decommissioned as the Sentinel program transformed. The screen lit up with a final status report on Project Prometheus, the most classified initiative within the already classified Sentinel program. Unlike the ancient fleet, which had been designed for defense and deterrence, Prometheus explored technologies so advanced they bordered on the theoretical. Gravity manipulation, controlled fold space generation, even limited temporal observation. Kang read the report carefully, then entered her final command. Continue research. Maintain absolute secrecy. Some insurance policies, she believed, should remain hidden, even in this new era of openness. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's journey among the stars had only just begun. As the terminal confirmed her command, Kang looked once more at the Earth rising above the lunar landscape. "Sleep well," she whispered to her homeworld. "We're still watching over you."